Former intelligence operative Marcus Reed is pulled back into the shadows when a series of devastating attacks hit American soil. When he teams up with FBI agent Omar Nazari to trap the elusive Muslim extremist Malik al-Zahir, their plan spirals into a deadly game of betrayal. As they chase the ghost of Damascus through a web of deception, they discover Malik's next target could claim hundreds of innocent lives. Before we begin, write in the comments where you're listening to our stories from. Subscribe to our channel, it's free, and you can always change your mind. Enjoy the story. Chapter 1. The Ghost. Marcus Reed stared at the photo on his secure tablet, a grainy surveillance image of a man who officially didn't exist. 15 minutes ago, a bombing in Chicago had killed 23 people. The signature was unmistakable. Minimal electronic trace, maximum psychological impact. Malik al-Zahir, the ghost of Damascus. "We've confirmed it's his work," said Director Bennett, her voice steady through the secure line. "This makes 3 attacks on American soil in 6 months. The president wants him neutralized." Marcus nodded, though no one could see him in the dingy motel room. "I'll need resources and freedom to operate my way. You have them both, within reason." There was a pause. "One more thing, Reed. Langley's assigned you a handler, Thomas Grayson. He's technically brilliant, but he's never been in the field. Plays war like it's a video game." Marcus closed his eyes, memories of Kabul flashing behind his eyelids, the dust, the blood, the betrayal. He'd sworn never to go back into the shadows. "I need you, Marcus," Bennett said quietly. "You're the only one who thinks like him." Marcus looked again at the photo. The man's eyes seemed to stare back, challenging him. "I'll take the assignment," he said finally. "But I want Omar Nazari as my contact on this." "The FBI agent? He hates us. After what happened in Detroit, he's the only one I trust," Marcus cut her off. "And if we're going to catch a ghost, I need someone who tells the truth." 3 hours later, Marcus sat in a corner booth at Milo's, a 24-hour diner on the outskirts of D.C. that hadn't been renovated since the 80s. He nursed a black coffee and stared out the rain-streaked window. His reflection showed what 5 years out of the game had done to him. The ex-journalist turned intelligence operative had more gray in his hair now, more lines around his eyes. The bell above the door jingled. Omar Nazari entered, shaking raindrops from his jacket. The FBI counterterrorism specialist scanned the diner before his eyes locked with Marcus's. His face didn't change, but the slight stiffening of his shoulders told Marcus everything. Omar slid into the booth across from him. "He didn't order anything. I was surprised to get your call," Omar said, his voice carefully neutral. "You weren't my first choice either." A hint of a smile. "Still a charmer, Reed." The waitress came by, but Omar waved her off. Marcus studied the man across from him. They'd worked together 3 years ago tracking a cell in Detroit. It had ended with 4 agents dead in a congressional inquiry. The official report had blamed Omar for faulty intelligence. The truth was more complicated. "You know why I'm here," Marcus said. "Chicago. The financial district bombing." Omar's dark eyes narrowed. "And now the agency wants back in domestic counterterrorism despite the restrictions put in place after Detroit. It's Malik al-Zahir." Omar went still. "You're sure?" "As sure as we can be without a signature or claim of responsibility." "The ghost doesn't make mistakes." "Exactly. Which means he wanted us to know it was him." Omar leaned back, studying Marcus. "Why come to me? Your people made it very clear I was persona non grata after Detroit." Marcus slid a flash drive across the table. "Because I need someone who plays it straight. No games, no hidden agendas." "And the agency signed off on this?" Omar's skepticism was apparent. "Not exactly." Marcus took a sip of his coffee. "I have operational discretion, meaning when this goes sideways, you'll be the fall guy." Marcus didn't deny it. "Take a look at what's on the drive. If you're not interested, walk away. No hard feelings." Omar pocketed the drive but made no move to leave. "What's your plan?" "Malik is a ghost for a reason. No digital footprint, no consistent pattern of movement, not even confirmed photographs. We're going to create something he can't ignore." Marcus leaned forward. "A new player, something that'll make him curious enough to reach out." "You want to build a honeypot operation?" It wasn't a question. "That's insane." "Malik has survived this long by being paranoid. He'll smell a trap." "Not if it's convincing enough." Marcus pushed his empty cup aside. "I need someone who understands how these networks operate, how they communicate, how they vet each other." "And your handler at Langley? They're on board with this unorthodox approach?" Marcus's expression hardened. "Thomas Grayson is a data analyst who thinks war is fought with algorithms and drone strikes. He'll know what he needs to know." Omar studied him for a long moment. "No games, Reed. No using me as bait or disposable asset. We do this as equals or not at all. Agreed. Full transparency. You still haven't told me what you're planning to create that would interest the most cautious terrorist in the world. Marcus smiled, though it didn't reach his eyes. We're going to build the Black Stars. Never heard of them. That's because they don't exist. Yet. The safe house in Arlington was sparse but functional. 3 laptops were set up on a dining table, alongside communication equipment that wasn't available to the public. Omar stood by the window, scrolling through the files on the flash drive. This is thin, he said finally. Suspected sightings in 6 countries over the past decade. Bombings with his signature in 4 more. No confirmed voice recordings, no concrete intelligence on his network. Hence the challenge. Marcus tapped one of the keyboards, bringing up a map with red markers scattered across it. What do you see? Omar examined the pattern. He stays away from countries with heavy American intelligence presence. Moves through regions with porous borders. Always has local support. And he's obsessed with symbols and dates. Omar pointed to a cluster of attacks. Anniversary of the American embassy bombing in Beirut. Opening of a U.S. military base in Qatar. The killing of Shahid Mazari in Pakistan. Marcus nodded. He's a careful student of history, and he's sending a message with each attack. So what message was Chicago supposed to send? That's what we need to figure out. Marcus pulled up security footage from the bombing site. The target was the Lawrence Banking Tower. Primarily houses financial firms that specialize in international investment. Omar frowned. Any specific companies that might be targets? Several with investments in defense contractors, oil companies operating in the Middle East, tech firms with government contracts. Marcus ran his hand through his hair. But the placement of the device, the timing, it doesn't match his usual precision. You think he's evolving his methods? Or it wasn't his primary target? Marcus pulled up a blueprint of the building and surrounding area. What if Chicago was just a calling card? A way to announce his presence on American soil before something bigger? Omar's phone buzzed. He checked it, his expression darkening. Problem? Marcus asked. Just my boss wondering why I'm not at my desk. Omar pocketed the phone. I haven't agreed to anything yet, Reed. But you will. Omar gave him a hard look. Tell me about the Black Stars. What exactly are you proposing? A fictional homegrown extremist group with international connections. We create a digital footprint, release manifestos, claim responsibility for minor incidents. Make it seem like they've been operating under the radar for months. And you think Malik will reach out to this fake group? He'll want to vet them, at minimum. He might see them as competition or potential allies. Either way, it gives us a chance to establish contact. Omar shook his head. It's a huge risk. If he suspects a trap, he'll disappear again, and we'll be back at square one. Marcus leaned against the table, but it's the only play we have. The room fell silent as Omar considered. Finally, he said, I want full deniability. Nothing on paper linking me to this operation. Done. And when Malik reaches out, if he reaches out, I make the call on how we proceed. Marcus hesitated, then nodded. Within operational parameters, Omar extended his hand. No games, Reed. No hidden agendas. Marcus shook it. No games. As they sealed their agreement, neither man noticed the small indicator light on one of the laptops blinking, transmitting everything to an office in Langley where Thomas Grayson was watching with growing interest. Chapter 2. Black Stars Rising. Thomas Grayson loved the sound of his office door closing. The soft pneumatic hiss meant he was sealed away in his domain, a temperature-controlled room filled with screens displaying data streams that would look like gibberish to anyone else. At 32, he was the youngest deputy director of digital operations in agency history. He'd never fired a gun or run an asset in the field, but he'd disrupted terror cells in 12 countries without leaving his ergonomic chair. Now he watched the feed from Marcus Reed's safe house with mixed emotions. Reed was a dinosaur, a relic from the era of human intelligence who somehow still had the director's ear. And now he was plotting with an FBI agent who'd nearly caused an international incident 3 years ago. Computer, make a note, Grayson said to the room. Operation Starfall is proceeding with unexpected variables. Subject Reed has enlisted Omar Nazari despite explicit instructions to maintain agency exclusivity. The AI assistant logged his comment as Grayson pulled up Nazari's file. The FBI agent had an impressive record before Detroit. Disrupted 3 domestic terror plots, key intelligence that led to the capture of the Minneapolis 7. Then came the warehouse raid that went sideways when Nazari's intelligence proved catastrophically wrong. Or was it? Grayson had his own theories about Detroit. His phone chimed with a message from Director Bennett. Progress? Grayson typed back, Reed is deviating from protocol. Recommend termination of operation. The response came quickly, monitor only. Reed has operational discretion. Grayson frowned, the old guard still protecting each other. He typed, acknowledged, then muted the conversation. On his screens, Reed and Nazari were mapping out their fictional extremist group. Grayson had to admit the concept was clever. Create a honeypot to draw out Malik al-Zahir, the most elusive terrorist operative in a generation. But it was unnecessarily complicated and slow, exactly what he'd expect from field dinosaurs. Computer, run simulation Alpha 3 on Malik al-Zahir's known movement patterns and communication protocols. His screens flickered as the AI complied. Grayson had been building his own model of Malik for years, feeding in every scrap of intelligence, every rumored sighting, every analysis of bombing sites attributed to him. The pattern recognition algorithms had identified 3 potential communication nodes that Malik might be using. Why track a ghost when you could predict where he'd appear next? Grayson opened a secure line to a drone operations center in Nevada. This is Deputy Director Grayson. I need surveillance package Echo 7 over these coordinates. He transmitted the data. Priority clearance Obsidian. Acknowledged, sir. Drone assets will be in position in 4 hours. Grayson smiled. Let Reed play his long game with the Black Stars. Grayson would deliver results the modern way, with data, algorithms, and precision strikes. The director would see which approach worked better. 2 weeks later, Marcus sat in a Starbucks in Georgetown, watching Omar Nazari approach through the crowd. They hadn't met in person since establishing the safe house, communicating only through encrypted channels. The Black Stars operation was taking shape. Digital breadcrumbs planted across the dark web, whispers in the right forums, a manifesto that blended anti-government sentiment with religious extremism. Omar slid into the seat across from him, coffee in hand. He looked tired. We have interest, Omar said without preamble. Someone's been probing the channels we established. Sophisticated. Careful. Marcus kept his expression neutral despite his excitement. Malik? Maybe. Too early to tell. Omar took a sip of his coffee. But they're using some of the verification protocols we built into the backstory. Specific phrases, timing patterns. What about the test incident? Omar glanced around before answering. The small explosive device we planted at the abandoned factory in Baltimore? It's getting attention. Local law enforcement is treating it as vandalism, but chatter in certain circles suggests people are connecting it to our fictional group. Good. Marcus pushed a burner phone across the table. Next phase. We need a face for the Black Stars. You want to put someone in the field? That's a huge risk. We need to make this real. Digital footprints only go so far. Omar pocketed the phone. Who did you have in mind? I have an asset from my journalist days. Former military, fell on hard times, now works security at a mall in Virginia. He'll do it for the right price. Can he be trusted? He doesn't need to know the real operation, just that he's playing a role for a government sting. Omar didn't look convinced. And what happens when Malik or his people want to meet this supposed leader of the Black Stars? That's when we spring the trap. Marcus lowered his voice. We control the meeting location, the timing, everything. It's our best chance to capture him. Or he sends proxies to vet us first. Men who are expendable. Then we work our way up the chain. Omar's phone buzzed. He checked it, frowning. My boss again. I've been making excuses for my absences, but he's getting suspicious. Tell him you're working a confidential lead on Chicago. That'll buy me a few days at most. Omar stood. I need to go. Set up the asset. I'll work on creating more digital evidence of our fictional group. After Omar left, Marcus lingered, watching the street through the window. A black SUV with tinted windows had been parked across the street for the past hour. Agency surveillance? Almost certainly. Bennett had promised him operational freedom, but he knew better than to think they'd let him run completely unsupervised. The question was whether they were just monitoring or actively interfering. He thought of Thomas Grayson, the analyst who'd been assigned as his handler. The man was brilliant with data, but dangerous in his ignorance of field realities. Marcus had deliberately kept him at arm's length, providing only the minimum required updates. His phone vibrated with an encrypted message, not from Omar. The source was listed simply as C, progress on Baltimore incident. 3 inquiries through established channels. 1 using correct authentication sequence. Proceeding to next phase per protocol. Marcus smiled slightly. C was Cameron Miles, a former CIA communications specialist who owed Marcus a favor from their time in Jordan. He was helping maintain the digital infrastructure of the Black Stars operation, separate from official agency channels. A precaution Marcus had taken without informing Grayson or even Omar, because despite what he'd promised, there were always games being played. And Marcus intended to be the one controlling the board. In his Langley office, Thomas Grayson frowned at his screens. Something wasn't adding up with Reed's operation. The digital footprint of this Black Stars group was too perfect, too carefully crafted. Anyone with serious counterintelligence experience would see it for what it was, a honeypot. Unless that was Reed's intention? To create something obviously fake to see who came looking. No, Reed wasn't that sophisticated with digital operations. This had the hallmarks of someone with significant cyber experience. Someone not on Grayson's radar. Computer, run correlation analysis on all digital signatures associated with Operation Starfall. Flag any patterns that match known agency or federal assets. The AI began its work as Grayson pulled up the drone surveillance feeds. For 2 weeks, he'd been monitoring the 3 communication nodes his algorithm had identified as potential Malik contact points. So far, nothing conclusive, but there had been unusual patterns of activity at a small internet cafe in Philadelphia. His phone rang. Director Bennett. "Ma'am," he answered. "Update me on Reed's operation." Her voice was clipped, businesslike. "The Black Stars digital operation is proceeding. They've staged a minor incident to establish credibility. Reed is planning to introduce a human asset as the face of the organization." "And your assessment?" Grayson hesitated. "It's unnecessarily complex and slow. My predictive models suggest—" "I didn't ask about your models, Grayson." "Is Reed making progress?" "Yes, but then continue monitoring and support as needed." "That's all!" The line went dead. Grayson stared at the phone, frustration building. The old ways were inefficient, dangerous, and relied too much on human intuition rather than data. His drone surveillance operation would prove that. One of his screens flashed an alert. Activity at the Philadelphia location. He expanded the feed to see a man entering the internet cafe, Middle Eastern appearance, mid-40s, carrying a laptop bag. "Computer, run facial recognition." Seconds later, the result appeared. No match in agency database. Similarity coefficients below threshold for any known associates of target Malik. Disappointing, but not surprising. Malik wouldn't use anyone who could be easily identified. Grayson switched to thermal imaging from the drone. The man was now sitting at a computer in the back corner of the cafe. Something about his posture, the careful way he positioned himself with his back to the wall, facing the entrance. It triggered Grayson's instincts. This wasn't just someone checking email. Initiate remote access protocol on the cafe's network. Capture all data from Terminal 7. The computer acknowledged the command. Within minutes, Grayson was watching a shadow copy of the man's screen activities. He was accessing a series of anonymous forums following a trail of links that led to... Grayson sat up straighter. The man was looking at information about the Black Stars, reading the manifesto Reed had created, examining the news reports about the Baltimore incident. Was this it? A Malik associate vetting the new group? The man opened a messaging application Grayson didn't recognize, something custom, not available commercially. He began typing a message. Grayson recorded everything, heart racing. This could be the breakthrough they needed. Forget Reed's slow burn approach. If this man was connected to Malik, they could track him, follow the digital breadcrumbs backward. The message the man was typing appeared on Grayson's screen. Initial assessment complete. Group appears organized but small. Potential for recruitment or elimination. Awaiting instructions on next steps. Elimination? Grayson felt a chill. Malik wasn't looking for allies. He was identifying competition. The man sent the message, then began systematically erasing his digital footprints, closing browsers, clearing caches. He was good, better than the average operative. This confirmed Grayson's suspicions. He reached for his phone to contact the FBI field office in Philadelphia. They could have agents there in minutes to follow the man when he left. But then he paused. If he involved the FBI, Reed would find out. This was Reed's operation officially. Grayson would have to explain why he was running his own surveillance. No, better to handle this himself. He had drone assets, digital tracking capabilities. He could follow this lead, develop it, and present Director Bennett with results rather than theories. The man in Philadelphia closed his laptop and stood. Grayson switched the drone to tracking mode. "Stay with the target," he instructed the drone operators in Nevada. "Full spectrum surveillance, passive mode only." As the man left the cafe, Grayson felt a surge of satisfaction. This was how modern intelligence work should be done. Clean, distant, data-driven. No messy human assets, no complicated relationships with questionable FBI agents, no outdated tradecraft. He would find Malik al-Zahir his way, and when he did, the era of the Marcus Reeds of the intelligence world would finally be over. What he didn't consider was that someone as careful as Malik might be expecting exactly this kind of surveillance, and might have plans to use it against those who were watching. Chapter 3. The Face of Deception. The man who would become the face of the Black Stars had a name that even Marcus rarely used. To most, he was simply Jackson, a former Army Ranger dishonorably discharged after an incident in Kandahar that remained heavily redacted in official records. Marcus had met him while researching a story on veterans falling through the cracks of the system. He'd never published that story, but he'd maintained contact with Jackson, occasionally using him as a source or for security work that required specific talents. Now Jackson sat across from Marcus in the back room of a pool hall in Alexandria, his massive frame making the wooden chair seem child-sized. A jagged scar ran from his right temple to his jaw, the result of an IED that had taken 3 of his squad mates. "Let me get this straight," Jackson said, keeping his voice low. "You want me to pretend to be the leader of a domestic terror group? One that doesn't actually exist?" "A sting operation," Marcus clarified. "We're trying to draw out a high-value target. And I'm the bait!" Jackson didn't seem bothered by the concept. "What's the pay?" "50,000. Half now, half when it's done." Jackson's eyes narrowed. "Why me? There must be plenty of agency assets you could use. Because you're not in any database. You're a ghost, just like our target." Marcus slid a manila envelope across the table. "Everything you need to know is in there. Memorize it, then burn it." Jackson opened the envelope, skimming the contents. "The Black Stars. Cute name." "It tested well with focus groups," Marcus said with the ghost of a smile. "And my job is to what? Make a video declaring our existence? Meet with potential recruits?" "Both. We've established digital presence, staged one minor incident. Now we need a face, a voice." Marcus leaned forward. "This is a major operation, Jackson. The target we're after has killed hundreds. You don't need to sell me, Reed. I've seen what these people do." Jackson closed the envelope. "Is this sanctioned? Official agency business?" Marcus hesitated just long enough for Jackson to notice. "Right," Jackson said with a grim smile. "One of those operations. You'll have full protection. We'll be monitoring everything, and if things go sideways, we'll extract you immediately." Jackson studied him for a long moment. "You know, in the Rangers, we had a saying about operations like this. Everyone's covered until no one is. This isn't the military. We don't leave our people behind. Tell that to the guys still rotting in black sites overseas." Jackson stood, tucking the envelope inside his jacket. "I'll do it. Not for the agency, but for you. You were the only one who gave a damn when I came back." "Thank you." Marcus stood as well. "There's a burner phone in the envelope. I'll contact you in 24 hours with the location for the video shoot." Jackson moved toward the door, then paused. "One question. This target we're after, is he as dangerous as they say?" "More," Marcus said simply. "Good." Something cold flashed in Jackson's eyes. "I was getting bored with mall security anyway." After Jackson left, Marcus remained seated, staring at nothing. Using Jackson was a calculated risk. The man was unstable at times, prone to violent outbursts that had ended his military career. But he was also believable, someone who could convincingly play the role of a radicalized veteran turned terrorist. His phone vibrated. "A message from Omar. We have another bite. Someone requesting direct communication with Black Star's leadership. Advanced tradecraft. Using the third verification protocol." Marcus felt a surge of adrenaline. The third verification protocol was the most obscure one they had created, known only to those deep in extremist networks. This wasn't a curious onlooker or law enforcement. This could be one of Malik's people. "Proceed with caution. Vet thoroughly. We unveil our face tomorrow." He sent the message, then opened a new secure channel to contact Cameron Miles. They needed to accelerate the digital footprint, make the Black Stars appear more substantial before Jackson made his debut. A video, some photos of supposed members, perhaps another minor incident that could be claimed. The trap was being set. Now they just needed the ghost to walk into it. Omar Nazari sat in his small office at the FBI field office, ostensibly reviewing case files on the Chicago bombing. In reality, he was monitoring the encrypted communications coming through the channels they'd established for the Black Stars. The latest message was troubling in its precision. Verification confirmed. Request face-to-face meeting with leadership to discuss mutual interests. Select coordinates from the following options for October 12th. 3 sets of GPS coordinates followed. Omar recognized the tradecraft immediately. Multiple options to test for surveillance, all in public places that would make interdiction difficult. He needed to consult with Marcus before responding, but he couldn't call from his office. Too many ears, too many questions already about his recent activities. His supervisor, Assistant Director Winters, had called him in twice this week to question his progress on the Chicago case. Making any headway, Nazari? The voice came from behind him. Omar minimized the screen immediately, turning to find Special Agent Diana Chen leaning against his doorframe. She was Winters' protege and never missed an opportunity to check on Omar's work, or lack thereof, as she saw it. Following some leads, Omar said neutrally. Nothing concrete yet. Chen stepped into his office uninvited, glancing at his computer screen. Funny. You've been following leads for weeks now. The director is getting impatient. Tell the director that tracing a ghost takes time. A ghost? Chen raised an eyebrow. You mean Malik al-Zahir? You think he's behind Chicago? Omar cursed inwardly. He'd said too much. It's a theory we're exploring. We? Chen smiled thinly. Or is this another one of your solo crusades? We all remember how well that worked out in Detroit. The mention of Detroit still stung, even after 3 years. Omar had been right about the warehouse, about the weapons. What he hadn't known was that the agency had their own operation running, one that his raid had compromised. In the chaos that followed, 4 agents had died. The official report had blamed Omar's faulty intelligence, not the agency's failure to coordinate. If you'll excuse me, Omar said, standing, I have a meeting. With whom? Chen blocked his path. A source, Omar said coldly. One I don't need to disclose to you. They stared at each other for a tense moment before Chen stepped aside. Winters wants a full briefing tomorrow morning. Bring more than theories. After she left, Omar grabbed his jacket and phone, heading for the exit. Once outside, he ducked into a coffee shop across the street and found a corner table. Using a secure app, he contacted Marcus. We have a meeting request. Tradecraft suggests high-level interest. Need to coordinate response. While waiting for Marcus to reply, Omar scanned the coffee shop out of habit. A young woman working on a laptop. An elderly man reading a physical newspaper. 2 businessmen arguing quietly over coffee. And a man at the counter who had been in the same elevator as Omar at the FBI building earlier. The man wasn't looking at Omar, was doing nothing suspicious, but the coincidence raised Omar's hackles. Was he being followed? By whom? The FBI, suspicious of his activities? The agency not trusting their arrangement? Or someone else altogether? Omar casually gathered his things and left through the side exit, taking a circuitous route to the metro station. He changed trains twice before emerging near the safe house in Arlington. Only when he was certain he wasn't being followed did he enter the building. Marcus was already there, along with a new face, a bear of a man with a scar that told its own violent story. Omar, meet Jackson, Marcus said. The new face of the Black Stars. Jackson nodded but didn't offer his hand. His eyes did a quick assessment of Omar that spoke of military training. We were just discussing the video, Marcus continued. Jackson will make a statement announcing the Black Stars' responsibility for Chicago and Baltimore, laying out a manifesto that aligns with what we've put online. Chicago? Omar frowned. That's a major claim. We don't want to attract too much heat from law enforcement. We need to make a splash, Marcus argued. Malik won't be interested in small-time players. And what happens when every federal agency starts hunting for the Black Stars? For him? Omar nodded toward Jackson. By then, hopefully Malik will have made contact. Marcus pulled up a map on one of the laptops. Speaking of which, tell me about this meeting request. Omar outlined the message and the 3 proposed locations. It's professional work. Multiple options, all public, all with easy escape routes. Marcus studied the coordinates. This one in Philadelphia. It's a weekend farmer's market. Crowded, open air, multiple exits. Could be a coincidence, but there's been unusual chatter from Philadelphia recently, Omar noted. Surveillance? Jackson asked, speaking for the first time. Too risky, Marcus shook his head. If it's Malik's people, they'll be watching for it. We need to seem confident, not paranoid. So I just walk in alone? Jackson didn't sound concerned, merely clarifying. No, we'll have coverage. Discreet, Marcus turned to Omar. You'll need to be there too, but at a distance. You know the faces from the files better than I do. Omar nodded reluctantly. If any of Malik's known associates show, I'll recognize them. What about your handler at Langley? Omar asked Marcus. Grayson, does he know about this meeting? No, Marcus said firmly, and he won't until after it happens. Grayson's too eager for results. He might try to turn this into a capture operation before we're ready." "You don't trust your own agency?" Jackson asked, looking between them. "I trust the mission," Marcus replied. "Not everyone's interpretation of how to accomplish it." The room fell silent as they all absorbed the implications. They were operating in a gray area now, semi-authorized but withholding critical information from their respective agencies. If things went wrong, the fallout would be severe. "Send the response," Marcus told Omar. "Accept the Philadelphia location." Jackson's video needs to be online before then to establish his credentials. As Omar composed the message, he couldn't shake the feeling that they were moving too fast, taking too many risks. The Black Star's fiction was becoming more real with each step, and the line between creating a convincing cover and actually becoming a terrorist group was blurring in ways that made him deeply uncomfortable. But it was too late to back out now. The trap was set, the bait was prepared, and somewhere in the shadows, a ghost was watching. In his Langley office, Thomas Grayson switched between screens, monitoring multiple data feeds. His drone surveillance of the man from the Philadelphia cafe had yielded interesting results. After leaving the cafe, the subject had visited 3 different locations: an apartment building in a middle-class neighborhood, a self-storage facility, and finally a mosque for evening prayers. The apartment building was a dead end. The subject had merely dropped off food to an elderly couple, possibly his parents. The storage facility was more promising. Grayson had redirected satellite coverage to capture thermal imaging, which showed the subject spending 23 minutes inside a storage unit. "Computer, any updates on facial recognition for target Epsilon?" "No positive identification in federal databases," the AI responded. "Partial match, 62% confidence to visa application for Fareed Hassan, Jordanian national, entered US 2023 on student visa." Grayson frowned. "A student visa?" He pulled up the application. Fareed Hassan, age 42, enrolled in a computer science master's program at Temple University. The age seemed odd for a graduate student, but not impossible. Something didn't add up. The careful tradecraft this man used, the way he checked for surveillance, his digital security, didn't match the profile of a middle-aged student. Grayson's phone lit up with a notification from one of his monitoring algorithms. Activity on a channel associated with the Black Stars. He opened it to find an exchange arranging a meeting in Philadelphia, at the same weekend market where his drone had tracked the subject yesterday. Coincidence? Unlikely. His first instinct was to call Reed, demand an explanation for why the Black Stars operation was being accelerated without his knowledge. But that would reveal that Grayson was monitoring the supposedly secure channels Reed had established. No, better to observe. If Reed and Nazari were meeting with someone connected to Malik, Grayson wanted to see it play out. And if things went south, he'd have drone assets ready to intervene. He opened a communication channel to the Drone Operations Center. "This is Deputy Director Grayson. I need surveillance package Sierra 9 over these coordinates for Saturday, starting at 0700 hours. Priority clearance Obsidian." "Acknowledged, sir." "Full spectrum coverage?" "Affirmative." "And add a Kingfisher unit." The Kingfisher was the agency's newest drone, small enough to be mistaken for an actual bird, equipped with advanced audio capture capabilities. "Sir, Kingfisher requires director-level authorization for domestic deployment." Grayson hesitated only briefly. "The authorization is in process. You'll have it before Saturday." "Yes, sir." After ending the call, Grayson leaned back in his chair. He'd need to get that authorization, which meant approaching Director Bennett. She wouldn't be pleased that he'd been running his own surveillance operation parallel to Reed's. But if his hunch was correct, if the man from the cafe was connected to Malik, and now Reed's Black Stars operation was making contact, this could be the breakthrough they needed. Bennett would forgive the procedural breach if it yielded results. Grayson pulled up his predictive model for Malik al-Zahir. The algorithm had been running continuously, incorporating new data as it became available. The latest projection showed a 73% probability that Malik was planning another attack within the next 30 days, with potential targets highlighted across a map of the United States. Chicago had been an outlier, not fitting the pattern of previous attacks, which suggested it wasn't the main event, but rather a precursor to something larger. Grayson zoomed in on the highest probability targets: New York, Washington, D.C., and somewhat surprisingly, Houston. The model couldn't identify specific locations within these cities, but it flagged certain types of sites as matching Malik's profile. Financial institutions, technology companies with defense contracts, and landmarks with symbolic value. The pieces were starting to connect. If the Black Star's operation was drawing interest from Malik's network, it could accelerate his timetable. Grayson needed to be ready, regardless of Reed's plans. He stood and straightened his tie. Time to brief Director Bennett and secure that authorization. One way or another, the ghost hunt was about to enter a new phase. Enjoying our stories? Don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you won't miss any of our upcoming content. Now let's get back to our story. Chapter 4: The Market. The Philadelphia Farmers Market was already bustling when Omar arrived at 8:30 a.m. He wore casual clothes, jeans, a Penn State sweatshirt, sunglasses, and carried a canvas shopping bag like any other Saturday shopper. A wireless earbud connected him to Marcus, who was positioned at a cafe across the street with line of sight to the market's main entrance. "In position," Omar murmured, pretending to examine organic tomatoes at a stall near the center of the market. "No sign of our contact yet." "Jackson's approaching from the north entrance," Marcus replied in his ear. "ETA 2 minutes. Remember, we're just watching today. Let them make the approach." Omar moved through the market, establishing a mental map of exits, cameras, and potential choke points. Old habits from his FBI training. The market occupied a city block with vendors arranged in rows selling everything from produce to crafts. The central aisle was crowded with families, couples, and the occasional tourist. Perfect cover, but also perfect for someone to disappear quickly if things went wrong. "Visual on Jackson," Marcus updated. "He's at the coffee stand near the center." Omar casually changed direction, moving to a flower stall that gave him a view of Jackson. The big man stood out despite his attempt to blend in, his military bearing and watchful eyes marking him as different from the relaxed weekend shoppers around him. Jackson bought a coffee and found a bench, seemingly absorbed in his phone. The video he'd recorded had gone live the night before, a 3-minute declaration of the Black Star's existence, their supposed responsibility for Chicago and Baltimore, and vague threats of further action against financial oppressors and their government protectors. The production value had been deliberately kept low, giving it an authentic grassroots feel. "Movement at the south entrance," Marcus said suddenly. "Male, mid-40s, green jacket, carrying a newspaper. Matches the description of our cafe visitor." Omar shifted position, pretending to smell a bouquet of sunflowers while scanning the crowd. He spotted the man, Middle Eastern features, trim beard, moving with the deliberate casualness of someone trained to blend in. "I see him," Omar confirmed quietly. "He's alone as far as I can tell." "Cameron's scanning all wireless communications in the area," Marcus said, referring to their tech specialist monitoring remotely. "No unusual patterns yet." The man in the green jacket meandered through the market, stopping occasionally at vendors, behaving like any other shopper. But his path was gradually bringing him closer to Jackson. "He's making an approach," Omar warned. "Moving into position." Omar drifted to a bread stall about 15 feet from Jackson's bench, close enough to intervene if necessary, far enough not to seem connected. The man in the green jacket finally reached the coffee stand near Jackson. He ordered something, then casually sat on the same bench, leaving an appropriate distance between them. For several minutes, neither acknowledged the other. Then the man set his newspaper down between them, the agreed-upon signal from the digital communication. Jackson glanced at the newspaper, then nodded almost imperceptibly. "Nice day," he said, the banal opening also part of the script. "It will rain by evening," the man replied with a slight accent, the correct countersign. "You read my manifesto," Jackson said, keeping his voice low. "Interesting ideas, though your claim about Chicago was ambitious." The man sipped his coffee. "Many would consider it an honor to be associated with such an operation. We give credit where it's due, and take it where it's earned." The man studied Jackson with new interest. "You're not what I expected." "What did you expect? Someone softer, academic perhaps. Your words online suggested a philosopher, not a warrior." Jackson shrugged. "I contain multitudes." The man almost smiled at that. "Indeed, my associates are interested in your organization. Its structure, capabilities. Perhaps there are ways we might be mutually beneficial to each other. I'm listening, not here." The man glanced around the market. "Tonight, there is a warehouse in South Philadelphia." He slid a piece of paper under the newspaper. "Come alone. We will know if you are followed." Jackson took the paper casually. "And who exactly am I meeting?" The man stood. "Someone who appreciates your work. Someone who has been doing it much longer and on a greater scale." "Malik?" Jackson said the name quietly. The man's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. "Be there at midnight, alone." He walked away, disappearing into the crowd within seconds. Omar watched him go, resisting the urge to follow. "Did you get that?" he murmured to Marcus. Every word, Marcus confirmed. Cameron's running facial recognition on the market's security cameras. Let's see if we can ID our friend. Omar made his way to Jackson, who remained seated, staring at the piece of paper in his hand. "What does it say?" Omar asked, sitting beside him. Jackson handed him the paper. An address in South Philadelphia's industrial district, a warehouse that had once been part of the city's shipping industry. "He wants me to come alone tonight." "That's not happening," Omar said firmly. Obviously, Jackson's voice was calm. "But we need to make him think it is." Marcus's voice came through their earbuds. "Fall back to the safe house. We need to plan this carefully." As they left the market separately, none of them noticed the small bird perched on a nearby lamppost, unnaturally still despite the bustle around it. "Absolutely not." Omar paced the safe house, his voice rising. "Sending Jackson in alone is suicide." Marcus remained calm, studying satellite imagery of the warehouse on one of the laptops. "Not alone. We'll have surveillance, backup positioned nearby." "They'll be watching for that," Omar argued. "This guy, this supposed connection to Malik, he's not amateur hour. He'll have counter-surveillance, escape routes planned." Jackson, leaning against the wall with arms crossed, spoke up. "I can handle myself." "That's not the point," Omar snapped. "We don't even know if this is really connected to Malik or just someone using his name. It could be a rival group, it could be another agency running their own operation. Hell, it could even be a setup from your people." He nodded toward Marcus. "If it were a setup from Langley, they wouldn't use a foreign operative," Marcus pointed out. Cameron's facial recognition got a partial match. "Our market friend is likely Fareed Hassan, Jordanian national on a student visa. Background checks show inconsistencies." "All the more reason to proceed with extreme caution," Omar insisted. "We need more time to vet this to prepare properly." "Time is a luxury we don't have," Marcus countered. "If this is a genuine connection to Malik, we can't risk losing it. The next attack could already be in motion." The tension in the room was palpable. Jackson watched the exchange with detached interest, like a spectator at a tennis match. "There's another option," he finally said. Both men turned to him. "I go in wired. Not standard equipment they might detect. Something custom." "And you," he nodded to Omar, "come with me as my second. Adds credibility that we're a real organization with a command structure." Omar and Marcus exchanged looks. It wasn't a bad idea, but it added another layer of risk. "They specifically said alone," Omar reminded him. "They say a lot of things," Jackson replied. "People like this, they respect strength, not obedience. If I show up with a lieutenant, it demonstrates confidence." Marcus considered the proposal. "It's risky, but it could work. Omar, you have the training for this kind of meet?" Omar wasn't convinced. "And what's our extraction plan if things go sideways?" "We can't exactly call in the cavalry without exposing the operation." "I have resources outside official channels," Marcus said. "People who can provide backup discreetly?" "More secrets," Omar muttered. "Exactly what you promised wouldn't happen." Marcus met his gaze steadily. "The goal hasn't changed. Find Malik. Stop whatever he's planning next. Everything else is just methodology." The room fell silent as Omar weighed his options. He could walk away now, report everything to his superiors at the FBI. His career would be over, but at least he wouldn't be complicit in whatever was about to happen. But if this really was aligned to Malik, to the man responsible for hundreds of deaths, including the Chicago bombing, could he live with himself if he walked away? "Fine," he said finally. "But we do this my way. Proper protocols, proper equipment. And at the first sign that things are going bad, we abort. No heroics, no improvising." "Agreed," Marcus nodded. He turned to one of the laptops. "Cameron, you got all that?" A voice came through the speaker. "Loud and clear. I can have custom equipment delivered within 2 hours. Untraceable. Undetectable by standard sweeps. Make it happen." Marcus started pulling up more detailed maps of the warehouse area. "Omar, you and I need to work out approach vectors, fallback positions. Jackson, you should review everything we have on Malik's known associates, communication patterns. If they test you tonight, you need to be convincing." As they began preparations, Omar couldn't shake the feeling that they were being played somehow. The meeting had been too easy, the contact too willing to provide information. It felt like they were being led precisely where someone wanted them to go. The question was, who was really setting the trap? In a secure office at Langley, Thomas Grayson reviewed the audio captured by the Kingfisher drone. The conversation between Jackson and the man identified as Fareed Hassan confirmed what Grayson had suspected. Reed's Black Stars operation was making contact with Malik's network. What Reed couldn't know, was that Grayson had been tracking Hassan for weeks. The Jordanian had visited 3 other cities in the past month, making similar contacts with fringe groups. It was a pattern that suggested recruitment or assessment, not alliance building. Malik wasn't looking for partners. He was identifying threats and opportunities. Grayson pulled up the warehouse location on his screens. South Philadelphia Industrial District, minimal civilian presence at night, multiple access points. A perfect location for a meeting or an ambush. He should inform Reed, warn him about Hassan's pattern. But that would mean admitting to unauthorized surveillance. More importantly, it would mean surrendering control of the operation back to Reed and his outdated methods. No, better to monitor and be ready to intervene if necessary. Grayson had already positioned additional drone assets over the warehouse, and a tactical team was on standby at a nearby agency safehouse. If things went bad, he could deploy them with minimal delay. His phone rang, Director Bennett again. "Ma'am," he answered. "Grayson, my office." Now, the call ended abruptly. Grayson straightened his tie nervously. Had she discovered his unauthorized activities? Or was this about something else entirely? 10 minutes later, he sat across from Bennett in her spacious office. The director was in her 60s. Her silver hair cut in a severe bob that framed a face that had seen decades of intelligence work. "Explain to me," she began without preamble, "why I have the FBI deputy director calling me about unusual surveillance activity in Philadelphia that they believe is agency originated." Grayson kept his expression neutral. "I'm running supplementary surveillance on potential Malik associates as authorized under Operation Starfall." Without informing Reed, without clearing it through proper channels? Bennett's voice remained calm, but her eyes were sharp. "The FBI is connecting dots, Grayson. They've picked up on our drone activity, the digital monitoring. It's only a matter of time before they identify the targets." "With respect, Director, Reed is running this operation based on outdated methodologies. My data-driven approach has already identified a potential Malik associate that Reed stumbled upon by chance." "By chance?" Bennett raised an eyebrow. "Or because Reed has 30 years of human intelligence experience and knows how to create an effective honeypot?" Grayson flushed slightly. "The point is, we have a developing situation tonight. Reed's asset is meeting with Hassan at a warehouse in South Philadelphia. Hassan's pattern suggests this could be an assessment, possibly leading to Malik himself." "And you were planning to inform me of this when?" "After I had confirmed Hassan's connection to Malik. I didn't want to present theories without—" "Enough!" Bennett held up a hand. "Here's what's going to happen. You will share all your intelligence with Reed immediately. The two of you will coordinate tonight's operation together. No solo plays, no hidden agendas. But Director, this isn't a request, Grayson. This is how we operate. As one agency, not competing fiefdoms." Bennett leaned forward. "You're brilliant with data, with patterns. Reed is excellent with human assets, with the messy, unpredictable nature of field operations. Together, you might actually catch this ghost. Separately, you'll just trip over each other." Grayson wanted to argue, but knew it was pointless. "Yes, ma'am." "Good. Reed is waiting in conference room 3. Go brief him now." As Grayson stood to leave, Bennett added, "And Grayson, remember that we're hunting Malik, not trying to prove which methodology is superior. Keep your ego in check." Grayson nodded stiffly and left the office. As he walked to the conference room, his mind raced with implications. Sharing his intelligence with Reed meant admitting he'd been running parallel operations. It meant surrendering some control. But it also meant having agency resources officially backing tonight's operation. If things went bad at the warehouse, that could make the difference between success and catastrophe. He pushed open the door to find Marcus Reed sitting at the conference table, looking as displeased as Grayson felt. "Reed," Grayson said coolly. "Grayson," Reed's voice matched his, "I hear you've been busy." "We need to talk about tonight's warehouse meeting," Grayson said, choosing to get straight to business. "There's information you should have before sending your assets in." Reed's expression changed slightly. Surprise, then caution. "I'm listening." Grayson pulled out his tablet and placed it on the table, bringing up images of Fareed Hassan. "The man your asset met at the market has a pattern. He's approached 3 other groups in the past month. None of them are still operational." Reed stared at the images, then at Grayson. The unspoken question hung in the air. "How long have you been watching?" "What happened to these other groups?" Reed asked instead. 2 suffered accidents that eliminated leadership. 1 disappeared entirely." Grayson swiped to show more images. "Hassan is not looking to make allies. He's identifying threats and eliminating them." Reed absorbed this information, his face unreadable. "And you know this because I've been tracking him since he appeared on our radar 3 weeks ago. My algorithm flagged unusual movement patterns consistent with Malik's network." "Your algorithm?" Reed's voice was flat. The same one that missed Chicago entirely? Grayson flushed. The Chicago attack didn't fit established patterns. That's why I believe it was a precursor to something larger, possibly coordinated with these reconnaissance activities by Hassan. For a moment, neither man spoke. The tension in the room was thick with professional rivalry and mutual distrust. "We have assets going into that warehouse tonight," Reed finally said. "Were you planning to warn us, or just watch if things went bad?" "I have a tactical team on standby," Grayson countered. "Drone surveillance already in place. If your operation had been properly logged through official channels, you would have known this." Reed's jaw tightened. "My operation is sanctioned by Director Bennett." "With certain parameters that you've exceeded," Grayson shot back. "Using an FBI agent without proper clearance, deploying a civilian asset without adequate protection protocols, running communication through unofficial channels." "Getting results," Reed said firmly, "which is more than I can say for your drones and algorithms." Before Grayson could respond, the door opened and Director Bennett entered. She looked between the two men with an expression of weary resignation. "Gentlemen, we don't have time for territorial disputes. Malik is still out there potentially planning his next attack. Tonight might be our best chance to get a lead on him." She sat at the head of the table. "Now I want a full briefing on tonight's operation. And I mean full, all assets, all contingencies, all intelligence. No holding back from either of you." Reed and Grayson exchanged one last wary look before turning to the director. Whatever their differences, Bennett was right about one thing. Malik was the true enemy. And tonight's warehouse meeting might be the key to finding him, if they could avoid getting in each other's way first. As Reed began outlining the Black Star's operation from the beginning, Grayson found himself reluctantly impressed by the thoroughness of the deception. Perhaps there was something to be said for the old ways after all. But he still believed his data-driven approach would ultimately prove superior, and tonight's operation would be the test. Chapter 5: Midnight Reckoning. The warehouse loomed against the night sky, a hulking silhouette of America's industrial past. Once it had processed shipments from across the globe, now it stood empty, windows broken, walls tagged with graffiti, a ghost itself, fitting for a meeting with the shadow of Malik al-Zahir. From their position in an unmarked van a block away, Marcus watched thermal imaging of the warehouse interior on a tablet. 6 heat signatures moved inside, more than they'd anticipated. 6 tangos, he murmured into his comm. 4 on the main floor, 2 on the upper level, positioned like sentries. "Acknowledged!" came Omar's voice, tight with tension. He and Jackson were approaching on foot, Omar posing as Jackson's second-in-command in the Black Stars. In the passenger seat beside Marcus sat Thomas Grayson, his face illuminated by the glow of his own tablet. The analyst had been uncharacteristically quiet since their forced partnership, focusing on drone feeds and data analysis rather than conversation. "Hassan entered 30 minutes ago," Grayson noted, swiping through thermal images. "The heat signature here," he pointed to a figure seated at what appeared to be a table in the center of the warehouse, "matches his profile." Marcus nodded, studying the layout. Something felt wrong. The positioning of the figures inside wasn't casual. It was tactical, defensive. "They're expecting trouble. Or they're just cautious," Grayson countered. "Standard security for any high-level meeting in these networks?" "No!" Marcus shook his head. "This is different. They're too spread out, too—" He trailed off as realization hit him. Pulling up the building schematics, he overlaid them with the thermal imaging. The sentries were positioned at structural support points. "It's a kill box," he said flatly. "They've set up a kill box." Grayson frowned. Then his eyes widened as he saw the pattern. "You're right. If those are explosives at those support columns..." Marcus was already reaching for his comm. "Abort!" he said urgently. "Omar Jackson, abort now. It's a trap." Static was his only answer. "Comms are being jammed," Grayson said, frantically checking frequencies. "Started 30 seconds ago." "How far out is our backup?" Marcus was already reaching for his weapon, checking the magazine. "Tactical team is 7 minutes away." "Too long." Marcus made a decision. "I'm going in. Monitor from here. Guide me if comms clear up." "That's against protocol," Grayson protested. "We should wait for— People will die in 7 minutes," Marcus cut him off. "My people!" He moved to the van's back doors. "If this goes bad, make sure Bennett knows we had it right. Malik is real and he's planning something bigger than Chicago." Before Grayson could respond, Marcus was out of the van and moving through the shadows toward the warehouse, his footsteps silent on the cracked pavement. Omar and Jackson approached the warehouse's side entrance, moving cautiously through the darkness. Both men were armed, Jackson with a Glock 19 in a shoulder holster, Omar with his FBI-issued Sig Sauer concealed at his back. Neither weapon provided much comfort given what they might be walking into. "Comms check," Omar murmured, tapping his earpiece. "Nothing but static. We're being jammed," Jackson said quietly. "Expected, but not a good sign." Omar nodded grimly. "Stick to the plan. I'm your lieutenant, you do the talking. First sign of trouble, we extract. No heroics." Jackson's scarred face showed no emotion, but his eyes were alert, scanning their surroundings with military precision. "Define trouble. Anything that doesn't feel right. Trust your instincts." They reached the side door. Jackson knocked in the pattern they'd been instructed to use. 3 quick, 2 slow. A moment passed, then the heavy metal door swung open. A man with a close-cropped beard and cold eyes looked them over, then stepped back to admit them. Omar noticed the subtle bulge of a weapon beneath the man's jacket. The interior of the warehouse was cavernous, dimly lit by industrial lamps that created pools of light amid vast shadows. In the center, under the brightest light, stood a folding table with chairs on either side. Farid Hassan sat on the far side, his expression unreadable as he watched them approach. Omar scanned the space, identifying 4 other men positioned throughout the warehouse. All had the bearing of trained fighters, and all were almost certainly armed. He also noted the cameras mounted high in the corners, modern wireless models that seemed out of place in the decaying building. "You were told to come alone," Hassan said as they reached the table, his voice carrying a slight accent. "I don't go anywhere alone," Jackson replied evenly. "This is my security chief." Hassan studied Omar with narrowed eyes. "You look familiar." Omar kept his face neutral. "I've got one of those faces." After a tense moment, Hassan gestured to the chairs across from him. "Please sit. We have much to discuss." As they sat, Omar felt the hairs on the back of his neck rise. Something was wrong here. The positioning of Hassan's men, the cameras, the way the meeting was staged, it felt more like theater than negotiation. "Your group interests us," Hassan began. "The Black Stars. A new player, yet already claiming responsibility for sophisticated attacks. Chicago especially was impressive." "We've been planning for years," Jackson said. "Operating in cells compartmentalized. Chicago was our announcement to the world." Hassan nodded thoughtfully. "And yet before 3 weeks ago, there was no trace of your organization anywhere. No whispers in the networks, no claims, no manifesto." He leaned forward. "It's as if you appeared from thin air." Jackson didn't flinch. "Security. We maintained strict communication protocols." "Of course," Hassan smiled thinly. "May I ask, what led you to form the Black Stars? What drove you to such extreme methods?" It was a test, Omar realized. Hassan was probing for inconsistencies in their cover story. Jackson launched into the narrative they'd crafted: military disillusionment, governmental betrayal, radicalization through online networks. It was convincing because it contained elements of truth, drawn from Jackson's actual experiences and grievances. As Jackson spoke, Omar noticed one of Hassan's men quietly leave the main floor, heading up a metal staircase to the upper level. Another subtle movement caught his eye, a man shifting position to block the exit they'd used to enter. They were being boxed in. Omar caught Jackson's eye, giving a nearly imperceptible shake of his head. Jackson smoothly continued his story, but Omar could tell he'd registered the warning. "Impressive," Hassan said when Jackson finished. "Truly. Your passion is evident." He reached into his jacket, prompting Omar and Jackson to tense, but he merely withdrew a phone. "I have someone who would like to speak with you. Someone who appreciates your work and sees potential for collaboration." He placed the phone on the table and tapped the screen. A video call connected, showing only darkness at first, then resolving into the shadowed features of a man. His face was partially obscured, but his eyes were clear. Dark, intelligent, evaluating. "Mr. Jackson," the man said, his voice distorted by some kind of filter. "Leader of the Black Stars. I've been watching your emergence with great interest." Jackson leaned forward slightly. "And you are?" A slight smile. "Someone who has been fighting the same enemies for much longer. Someone who recognizes both talent and opportunity when he sees it." Omar felt his pulse quicken. Was this him? Malik al-Zahir himself? "I admire your ambition," the shadowed figure continued. "Chicago was unexpected, but claiming credit for another's work is a dangerous game." "We claimed what was ours," Jackson said firmly. "Did you?" The man's tone hardened slightly. "Let me ask you something, Mr. Jackson. The detonator used in Chicago, was it remote-triggered or timer-based?" A trap question. The details of the detonator had been kept out of the press. Jackson hesitated, just a fraction of a second too long. "As I thought," the man said quietly. You are not who you claim to be." Hassan stood abruptly, his hand moving toward his waistband. Omar tensed, ready to draw his weapon, when a new voice spoke from the shadows. "Nobody move!" All heads turned to see Marcus Reed step into the light, his weapon drawn and aimed at Hassan. "FBI! Everyone stay where you are!" Chaos erupted. Hassan's men reached for their weapons. The shadowed figure on the phone screen barked orders in Arabic. Jackson overturned the table for cover as Omar drew his weapon. The first shots rang out, echoing through the cavernous warehouse. Omar pulled Jackson down behind the overturned table as bullets splintered the wood above their heads. "You couldn't just stick to the plan?" Jackson growled, drawing his own weapon. "What plan?" Omar fired back, quite literally, squeezing off 2 shots at a gunman moving towards their position. "The one where we all die in this warehouse?" Across the room, Marcus had taken cover behind a concrete pillar. He was pinned down by fire from 2 directions, unable to advance or retreat. "We need to get to Reed," Omar said, assessing the situation. "Create a crossfire. Give us a chance to reach the exit." Jackson nodded, checking his magazine. "On 3. 1, 2. Before he could say 3, a deafening explosion rocked the warehouse. Part of the ceiling collapsed as a support column gave way, sending debris crashing down. The lights flickered, then died, plunging the space into darkness broken only by muzzle flashes and sparking electrical wires. In the chaos, Omar lost sight of Jackson. He could hear shouting, more gunfire, the crackle of flames starting to take hold in one corner of the building. "Jackson!" he called out. "Marcus!" A hand grabbed his shoulder. He spun, weapon raised, to find Marcus crouching beside him. "We need to move!" Marcus shouted over the noise. "The whole place is wired to blow. They're triggering it section by section." "Where's Jackson?" "I don't know. But we've got about 2 minutes before this whole building comes down." Another explosion rocked the structure, closer this time. Omar could feel the heat of flames growing more intense. "Hassan," Omar said suddenly. "We need to get Hassan. He's our link to Malik." Marcus shook his head. "He's gone. Use the explosion as cover to escape through a back exit." "The phone. Did you see where the phone went? We might be able to trace—" A third explosion cut him off, this one directly overhead. Marcus tackled Omar as a section of the ceiling collapsed where they had been standing seconds before. "No more arguments," Marcus said, pulling Omar to his feet. "We're leaving. Now." They moved through the burning warehouse, navigating by the glow of flames and the faint emergency lights that had activated. The air was thick with smoke and dust, making it nearly impossible to see more than a few feet ahead. They found one of Hassan's men dead from a gunshot wound. Another was trapped beneath fallen debris, still alive but badly injured. Marcus paused only long enough to drag the wounded man clear of the immediate danger before pushing on. They were nearly at the exit when Omar spotted a familiar form sprawled on the ground ahead. "Jackson!" They rushed to the big man's side. He was conscious but bleeding from a head wound and what looked like a gunshot to his shoulder. "Took you long enough," Jackson muttered as they helped him up. "Can you walk?" Marcus asked. "Better than you two pretty boys," Jackson grunted, though he leaned heavily on Omar as they moved toward the exit. They burst through the door into the cool night air just as the largest explosion yet tore through the warehouse. The force of the blast threw them forward onto the pavement as the building behind them collapsed in on itself in a roar of flame and destruction. Omar lay on the ground, ears ringing, lungs burning from smoke and exertion. Above, he could hear the distant whoomp-whoomp of helicopter rotors. Tactical teams arriving too late as usual. He turned his head to see Marcus pushing himself up on his elbows, face blackened with soot but very much alive. Jackson lay nearby, grimacing in pain but conscious. They had survived, but their link to Malik, their chance to catch the ghost, had gone up in flames with the warehouse. Or had it? As the helicopter searchlights illuminated the area and tactical teams began to secure the perimeter, Omar noticed something clutched in Jackson's good hand. Hassan's phone, somehow retrieved in the chaos. Maybe this night wasn't a total loss after all. In his Langley office, Thomas Grayson watched the feeds from multiple sources: tactical team body cams, helicopter footage, drone surveillance, all showing the burning remnants of the Philadelphia warehouse. The operation had been a disaster. Hassan had escaped. Reed, Nazari, and Jackson had nearly been killed. And the shadowy figure on the phone, possibly Malik himself, had vanished back into the digital ether. Yet Grayson felt a strange sense of vindication. His analysis had been correct. The warehouse had been a trap, designed to eliminate the Black Stars as a potential threat or competition. The pattern he'd identified in Hassan's previous meetings had held true. Data didn't lie. Patterns didn't deceive. It was human assets, human judgment that introduced variables and chaos. His phone rang. Director Bennett, no doubt wanting an explanation for the night's events. "Ma'am," he answered, bracing for the dressing down he expected. "Grayson," Bennett's voice was terse. "I'm looking at preliminary reports from Philadelphia. Tell me we got something out of this disaster." "Hassan escaped," Grayson admitted. "But Reed's team recovered his phone. It's being analyzed now. And we have confirmation that Malik is personally involved in whatever's coming next. He was on the video call. Confirmation or speculation? The voice pattern analysis is running now, but based on the reaction of Hassan's team and the level of security, it fits the profile." Bennett was silent for a moment. "The FBI is asking questions. Their agent was operating outside authorized parameters. This is becoming a jurisdictional nightmare." "Reed authorized Nazari's involvement," Grayson pointed out, seeing an opportunity to shift blame. "And you knew about it and didn't report it," Bennett countered. "Don't play games with me, Grayson. You're both in the hot seat for this!" Grayson swallowed his protest. "Yes, ma'am. What's your assessment now? Where do we stand with Malik?" Grayson pulled up his predictive model, now incorporating new data from the night's events. "The pattern suggests escalation. Chicago was a test or a distraction. He's planning something bigger, and soon. The attempted elimination of the Black Stars indicates he's tying up loose ends, clearing the stage. Targets? Still analyzing. But Houston is showing the highest probability. Something connected to the energy sector, possibly, based on his historical pattern of targeting strategic infrastructure combined with recent financial transfers to cells in the region." Grayson hesitated. "But there's something else. Something that doesn't fit the pattern." "Go on." "Reed recovered audio from the warehouse before communications were jammed. Malik mentioned Chicago specifically, taking credit for it. But he seemed angry that the Black Stars had claimed it. Possessive, almost. Your point? Chicago wasn't just another attack for him. It was personal somehow. Special?" Grayson pulled up data on the Chicago bombing. "We need to look deeper at the Lawrence Banking Tower. There was something specific there that Malik wanted to destroy." "Get on it," Bennett ordered. "And Grayson, when Reed gets back, I want you two working together. No more parallel operations, no more territorial BS. Clear?" "Clear," Grayson responded, though the thought of working directly with Reed made his jaw clench. After ending the call, Grayson stared at his screens, particularly the model showing Houston as a likely target. Something didn't feel right. It was too obvious, too consistent with previous patterns. What if Malik knew they were looking for patterns? What if he was deliberately creating false ones to misdirect? For the first time in his career, Grayson found himself doubting his data-driven approach. Maybe there was something to Reed's old-school methodology after all, the human intuition that couldn't be quantified or programmed. He pulled up a direct line to the technical team analyzing Hassan's phone. "This is Deputy Director Grayson. I need everything you can get from that device. Call logs, messages, photos, location data, and I need it yesterday." As he hung up, his gaze fell on a notification that had just appeared on one of his screens. A facial recognition hit from airport surveillance. It wasn't Hassan, it was someone else entirely. Omar Nazari, boarding a flight to Houston 12 hours before the warehouse meeting. But Nazari had been in Philadelphia all day. Grayson had seen him with his own eyes. Unless Grayson's blood ran cold as he enlarged the image. It looked like Nazari, but something was off. The posture, perhaps, or a subtle difference in facial structure that the algorithm hadn't caught. He ran the image through a deeper analysis, comparing minute details against Nazari's FBI file photos. Not Nazari. A double. Someone surgically altered to resemble him. Grayson reached for his phone again, this time dialing Reed directly. As it rang, he pulled up everything he had on the Houston energy sector, focusing on potential targets with maximum impact. The ghost was no longer hiding. He was moving into position for his endgame, and they had less time than they thought. Chapter 6. Ghosts and Shadows. 3 days after the warehouse inferno, Omar Nazari sat in a sterile hospital room, his hands bandaged from second-degree burns, watching CNN's coverage of the catastrophe in Houston. The death toll stood at 63, with hundreds more injured when explosions ripped through the National Energy Conference. The commentators speculated endlessly about responsibility, motives, security failures. But Omar knew. They all knew. The door opened and Marcus Reed entered, looking as exhausted as Omar felt. Without a word, he dropped a newspaper on the bed. The headline screamed, "FBI agent linked to terror attack." "It's starting," Marcus said grimly. "They're building the narrative." Omar nodded, unsurprised. "My double in Houston, the perfect scapegoat. Your face on security cameras. Your credit card used to rent a car, a hotel room. Enough of a trail to convince people who want to be convinced. And the real story? Marcus sat heavily in the visitor's chair. Buried, classified. The Black Stars operation never existed. Grayson's predictive models were experimental and unauthorized. Director Bennett is deeply concerned about procedural violations. And Malik? A ghost story. Marcus's voice was bitter. Too complicated for press briefings and congressional hearings. Better to have a clear villain, a rogue FBI agent with a history of questionable judgment. Omar laughed humorlessly, wincing as the movement pulled at his burns. Detroit all over again. I'm the fall guy while the agency walks away clean? Not exactly, Marcus countered. Grayson's career is over. Mine too, probably. Bennett's protecting the institution, not individuals. They sat in silence, the television continuing its breathless coverage. Photos of Omar appeared on screen periodically, official FBI headshots alongside grainy security footage of his double in Houston. What about Jackson? Omar asked finally. In custody. They're offering him a deal. Testify that you recruited him for a domestic terror cell, and he walks. Will he take it? Marcus shrugged. Hard to say. He's a survivor. The door opened again, this time admitting Thomas Grayson. The analyst looked out of place in the hospital setting, his pristine suit and perfect tie at odds with the sterile functionality around him. Gentlemen, he said awkwardly, I thought you should know. Hassan's phone yielded results. We found communications, plans, enough to convince Bennett that Malik is real and still operating. Too late for Houston, Omar said flatly. Grayson nodded, having the decency to look pained. Too late for a lot of things, but we have new leads. Operations are being planned now. Without us, Marcus noted. Yes, Grayson hesitated. For what it's worth, I argued that you should be included, that your experience, your methods have value. High praise, Marcus said with heavy irony. Grayson looked between them. I'm authorized to offer you a deal, Nazari. Resign quietly, sign extensive non-disclosure agreements, and the FBI drops its investigation. You walk away with your reputation damaged, but your freedom intact. And if I fight, tell the truth, then it becomes your word against the full weight of 2 federal agencies. Grayson didn't sound pleased about this reality, merely stating facts. No one wins that fight. Omar closed his eyes briefly. When do I need to decide? 24 hours. Grayson moved to leave, then paused at the door. For what it's worth, I was wrong about both of you. Your instincts, your human intelligence approach, it would have worked if we'd coordinated properly from the start. After he left, Marcus and Omar sat in silence again, the weight of failure and betrayal heavy between them. What will you do? Marcus finally asked. Omar looked at the newspaper, at his face plastered across the front page. What choice do I have? Sign the papers, disappear into obscurity. What about you? Bennett offered me a teaching position at the farm, training the next generation of field operatives. Marcus smiled without humor. Apparently, my methods still have some value. You should take it. I'm not sure I can. They were interrupted by a nurse bringing Omar's medication. After she left, Marcus leaned closer, lowering his voice. I kept something from Hassan's phone. Before Grayson's team got it, Omar raised an eyebrow. What? Coordinates, a meeting location, and a name. Not Malik, but someone close to him. Marcus, Omar warned, it's over. We lost. Did we? Or did we just lose this round? Marcus's eyes held a familiar intensity. Malik is still out there. He'll strike again. And next time, no one will be looking for him because officially, he doesn't exist. What are you suggesting? That when you're cleared to leave this hospital, we continue the hunt. Off books, off grid. Just us, using what we know. Omar stared at him incredulously. You're talking about going rogue. Hunting a ghost without resources, without backup. With the truth, Marcus countered. Something in short supply these days. Omar looked back at the television, now showing footage of the Houston aftermath. The burned buildings, the grieving families, the flag-draped coffins. 63 dead because agencies couldn't cooperate, because data couldn't capture human malice, because bureaucracy valued its reputation over its mission. No games this time, Omar said finally. No hidden agendas. Just the hunt, Marcus nodded. Just the hunt. 2 weeks later, a small motorboat cut through the waters of Chesapeake Bay under a moonless sky. Omar stood at the bow, his burned hands healed enough to grip the railing. Behind him, Marcus navigated toward a small island barely visible in the distance. They were ghosts now themselves. Omar officially disgraced and in hiding, Marcus supposedly on extended leave before taking his teaching position. Only they knew the truth. that the hunt for Malik al-Zahir continued, that the shadow game played on. Somewhere in the darkness ahead was another piece of the puzzle, another step toward the ghost who had eluded them. Another chance to prevent the next Houston, the next Chicago. Omar thought of all they had lost, careers, reputations, the trust of their institutions. He thought of Jackson, now cooperating with authorities to save himself. He thought of Grayson, whose data had been both right and wrong in the ways that mattered most. But mostly he thought of the 63 coffins from Houston and the hundreds more that would follow if Malik remained free to operate in the shadows. "Ready?" Marcus called from behind him as the island loomed closer. Omar nodded, checking his weapon one last time. "Ready." The game of shadows continued, but this time they were playing by their own rules. Wow, what a story! Don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you won't miss any of our upcoming content.